In the year 1947, the world found itself plunged into a chilling conflict known as the Cold War. It was a time of tension, suspicion, and a whole lot of sarcasm. The two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, were locked in a battle of ideologies, each trying to outdo the other without actually engaging in direct military combat. It was like a high-stakes game of chess, with the fate of the entire world hanging in the balance. The Americans and the Soviets were like two rival siblings fighting for control of the family TV remote. They couldn't stand each other, but they also couldn't live without the thrill of the competition. The US was all about democracy, freedom, and capitalism, while the USSR was all about communism, state control, and vodka. It was a clash of titans, with each side trying to prove that their way of life was superior. The Cold War wasn't just about political posturing and military buildup. It was also a war of words, with both sides engaging in a battle of propaganda. The Americans had Hollywood on their side, churning out movies that portrayed the Soviets as evil villains, hell-bent on world domination. Meanwhile, the Soviets had their own propaganda machine, painting the Americans as greedy imperialists who cared more about money than people. But it wasn't all serious business during the Cold War. There were moments of absurdity and hilarity that broke through the tension, like the time the US and the USSR competed to see who could send the first man into space. It was a race to the stars, with both sides pouring billions of dollars into their space programs just to prove a point. And when Yuri Gagarin became the first man in space in 1961, you can bet there were some pretty smug Soviets celebrating with shots of vodka. The Cold War was like a never-ending game of cat and mouse, with both sides constantly trying to outwit each other. There were close calls and near misses, like the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, when the world came perilously close to nuclear war. It was a time of fear and uncertainty, but also a time of dark humor and irony. In the end, the Cold War came to a close in 1991 with the collapse of the Soviet Union. The Americans emerged victorious, but it was a bittersweet victory. The world had been forever changed by the conflict, and the scars of the Cold War would linger for decades to come. So, as we look back on those tumultuous years of the Cold War, let's remember the absurdity, the tension, and the sheer audacity of it all. It was a time like no other, when the fate of the world hung in the balance, and sarcasm was the weapon of choice.